The December program of the Council on Aging is now called to order. Commissioner Loomis, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Francine, would you call the roll, please?
Absolutely. Happy holidays. Commissioner Borging.
Here.
Commissioner Fotheringham.
Here.
Commissioner Grimm.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Commissioner Healy is absent. Commissioner Loomis.
Utah and Arizona. Thank you.
Commissioner Norkin.
Here.
Commissioner Shentaz. Commissioner Searden. And Commissioner Wing. Commissioner Wing.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, it's time for public comments, and our first speaker will be Ron Schmidt. Ron is president of the Global Senior Center Adult Commission. Ron?
Thank you, Jim. I'm here today to do a commercial, actually. The commission, the Senior Center Commission, is starting a new first-time event. It's called the Global Antiques Bazaar. And it should be, we're hoping it's going to be really a fun thing. We've got lots and lots of things planned. We're going to have a number of vendors, and I use that as in a loose term, who have antique articles for sale. Then we're also going to have evaluators. The evaluators are, a la Antique Roadshow, you bring your article in, and they will evaluate it. They will determine, is it an antique? What is its value? And they're not going to try to buy it. That's up to you. We're also going to have lots and lots of door prizes. We're going to have a silent auction. The silent auction is going to involve not necessarily only antiques. We have, as an example, we have a round of golf for you golfers. 4 people at Lake Sherwood Golf Club, including cart. That's one of our nice prizes. We have others equally fun, but not necessarily all antique-oriented. We're going to have live music all day long. We're going to have a piano player for a few hours. And this person said, oh, good. I'm going to finally go back to my 40 and 50 and 60 repertoire. So we're going to have the music. Then we're going to have, for another few hours, a harpist. I think that's the right word. A harpist to entertain us. And we're going to have lunchtime, of course, all day long. We're going to have the cafe will be open. We're going to be serving hot dogs. Some really great hot dogs. They're quarter pounds. They're all beef. And you can have them plain. You can have them with sauerkraut. You can have them with chili. And we're going to have homemade pork pulled sandwiches for lunch, as well as coffee, tea, milk, soda, etc. Oh, did I mention? Yes, I did mention the silent auction. All right. The admission fee is $5, and there is a brochure or a flyer available. And we also, if you want your articles evaluated, it's $5 per article. All proceeds go to the commission, and all of which will be spent on our senior population, every penny of it. And we would love you to have it. Come and see us. It's January 22nd. It runs from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. You do not have to be present to win the door prizes. That's part of your admission ticket. You leave the stub, and we'll call you if you won one. And I think that's it. Any questions? No? Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Ron. Our next speaker is Elise Klossman. Elise is the chair of our Senior Adult Master Plan Implementation Team, Housing Team.
Thank you, Jim. There are good things happening all the time in Thousand Oaks, and one of the most wonderful things happening is what's called Our Community House of Hope. This is a hospice which will serve the isolated and low-income persons to provide end-of-life care I have recently been asked to serve on their fundraising committee, and so what I'm trying to do is, in addition to raising money, I would like to raise awareness. And one of the things that is happening, they have not received their certification from the state yet, so therefore they have no patients in the facility. However, it is ready to go, and they are available. The building is available for meetings. My housing team met there last week, and they have a lovely big table which seats all of the team members, and they served us coffee cake, orange juice, and warmly greeted. And then you get a tour of the facility and a good bit of information in regard to what their goals are and what their needs are. And so I wanted to let everybody here know that any SAMP meeting, any of the team leaders may talk with me, and I'll make sure that you can have your meeting there. And any council, I really think that the Council on Aging could have one of your smaller meetings at the facility. They would be happy to have you. This is part of housing, because this is the end-of-life place where hopefully this is going to be something that people are going to have to deal with. We're all going to die. But unfortunately, there are thousands of people who are poor, they're isolated, and many of them, and the police will tell you this, they die at home alone. And so this is an effort to meet the needs of that population. So I wanted to bring this to the attention of the council and the public, and we look for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Elise. So now we come to our program, Purposeful Giving in Challenging Times. Our moderator for today's program has been a blessing in this community for many, many, many years. But I was surprised to learn just today that our moderator started out his career as a PI. Yeah, private investigator, packing heat, chasing down the bad guys. He moved on from that and has served as the executive director of the Action Foundation for many years, and is now the executive director of Project Understanding. It's with great pleasure I introduce Rob Orth. Rob?
Thanks, Jim, so much. Now that you've let the cat out of the bag on the PI afterwards, I'm going to have people coming up saying, hey, I've lost my whatever, and there's a slight charge, but I'll still look for it. Well, what a blessing to be here today with all of you. I think the last time I was here, I was on the recipient end as one of the speaker board. Today I'm here on the moderator end, and you guys are in for a real treat. Today we have three wonderful folks that serve this community to no end, just as I do from my seat. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Project Understanding for those of you who haven't heard of it, since this is mostly a Conejo Valley audience. Project Understanding is somewhat like Lutheran Social Services, but we're primarily in the city of Ventura. We do have some services in Oxnard and Santa Paula and surrounding areas, but we provide all types of services to those that are in some type of life need. It could be they're about to lose a home, they've lost a job, a family member has passed away, they're short on food, they need housing, and so we provide all those types of services, and if we don't, we network with many, many agencies all across Ventura County to try and figure out where can that person be to help resolve whatever their situation is. I'm going to read our mission statement because that helps define more clearly. We provide hope by developing, directing resources for the purpose of transforming lives and community through justice, mercy, and compassion. And in our vision statement, we talk about how do we assist folks that are in some sort of need to raise up to their highest level of attainable achievement. And so for one person, getting from A to B is their next goal. For others, it's A to Q. We just never know as we interface with those that end up, in a sense, on our doorstep. And I think the same could be said for all of our speakers today. They are doing these types of things with families. Families that are in need at some level, whether it be they're newly homeless, about to be homeless, just low income and needing a leg up. Each of us engage in that within our community. For today, what we're going to be talking about is giving purposefully. And that can mean a lot of things. And here we are at the holiday season. I think we're on our third year as a nation where things have economically changed radically, and I think we all can agree with that. And how do we give to not just our family members, but those within the community where we want to figure out how can we do something to have an impact with what little resources we have that are really dynamic. And it takes planning and thinking in order to do that. You can't just pull up and say, okay, this person has a need and I'm going to give them X. That usually doesn't work. And for those of us that think about giving gifts to family members, and you actually, instead of walking into Target with no list and wandering the aisleways, you end up with a bunch of scented candles and things that are going to get passed on downstream to somebody else because we can only use so many of those. But how can we take those dollars and really invest them into the community? So we're going to talk about that today from three different vantage points from our speakers. And first I'm going to pick on Stacy Swanson. Stacy is the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity. Stacy, how long have you been there now?
I've been with Habitat for 5 years.
Okay, wonderful. And most people don't know this, and I know you know, but Habitat used to be under the umbrella of Project Understanding way back in the day.
Right.
Yes.
Our organizations were founded by the same amazing couple, Virgil and Lynn Nelson, who also founded Food Share.
Correct.
So.
Yeah, and they're still in our community, and Virgil is always throwing great new ideas for me to do that involve a lot of work. So he is a character. So Stacy, why don't you tell us a little bit about, just in a general picture, of what is Habitat for Humanity and what do you guys do here in Ventura County?
Sure. Habitat for Humanity, I feel very blessed to work for an organization like Habitat because so many people have heard of us. Habitat for Humanity is an international organization, but our biggest hurdle here in Ventura County is that a lot of people don't realize that we're here. We're working with the low and very low income residents here in Ventura County to create affordable housing for them. Our mission is to eradicate substandard housing in Ventura County and create simple, decent, affordable housing for low and very low income families. So we're serving the same population, all of us on this panel in one way or another. And for us, the mission truly is to break that cycle of poverty, to take a family who's living in a substandard condition, who really just needs a hand up. They just need that one final push to be able to live in a stable environment where they can raise their family and really make a permanent change for good, and to make that change for their children so that their children have a different expectation of what their future is going to look like. We're really a long-term solution to a very important problem. This year we also introduced a very exciting new program called Preserve a Home, where we're doing rehabilitation and repair for low and very low income homeowners. So owner-occupied homes for primarily, a lot of them are seniors who we're serving, who have created, not of their own fault, a substandard condition for where they live, and they need some assistance. They may be on a fixed income, there may be above and beyond what they can do, and we're able to leverage the amazing network of volunteers that we have across Ventura County and partnerships that we have with other builders and construction material suppliers to provide those kinds of rehab and repairs for low-income families as well.
Well, thank you. You mentioned Hand Up. This is something that we're going to be listening for as the speakers talk and as I ask questions of what does it mean in our act of giving, purposeful giving, to give someone a hand up as opposed to a handout. This is a discussion that not just this community is having from the social service standpoint, but this is a national discussion. We are at a time with finances where governments who have funded all of us in the past in certain ways really are having trouble coming up with resources. And we're challenged to look at now how do we do this with the resources we have, the dollars that the community gives us, and what money does come from various government organizations to raise people up, not to sustain a lifestyle that is broken, but how do we partner with that person or that family, which is exactly what Habitat does in many mansions and LSS, to move them along a continuum to the next step in their lives, whatever that step might be. So Rick, why don't you, Rick Schrader, Many Mansions. Everybody knows Rick. especially in the Conejo Valley. So.
Yes, and thank you, Rob. We are well known in the Conejo Valley. Many Mansions is a nonprofit affordable housing and service provider. We were founded here in Thousand Oaks in 1979. And what we do as a nonprofit, we develop affordable housing. We develop affordable housing by building affordable housing rental complexes or acquiring existing apartments and rehabbing them. And once we've acquired them, once we've developed them, we then rent them out to our low-income population. I think Rob is mentioning, we very much believe in giving people a hand up, not a handout. All of our residents pay rent, and we currently have 12 apartment complexes in Thousand Oaks, Simi Valley, and Oxnard. And they're targeted to a variety of populations. Everyone is low income, but many of our residents are seniors. Many have been formerly homeless, and a number of them have also have a disability, physical disability, mental or emotional disability. What distinguishes many mansions, though, is that not only do we provide the housing, we also provide what we call life-enriching services for our residents. That is, along with the housing, on site we have a variety of service programs. So at our sites that we have children, our family complexes, we have a variety of programs for the kids. Again, trying to break that cycle of poverty. We have an after-school tutoring program for the kids, so they stay in school, they do well. We have a program during the summertime, a free summer camp program. We have a career preparations program, especially for our teens that are looking for jobs or looking to go to college. For our adults, especially our homeless, our formerly homeless, and our disabled adults, we have a variety of programs, a case management counseling program, a program for their job development, a program for socialization skills, parenting skills, life skills, things like that. So what we're trying to do is work with the residents to enrich their lives, which will also then enrich the community as well. So we've been around quite a bit. We rely on community support in a variety of ways. I think we'll get into that a little bit later. Lots of volunteers, lots of community support. What we're trying to do is serve a segment of our population that needs housing. Our homeless population in Thousand Oaks and in Ventura County has increased over the years, especially homelessness for families, homeless mothers and children. So we actually have one of our programs, our transitional housing program, Stoll House, is specifically for homeless families, where we're transitioning those families who are living on the street into permanent housing. So it's kind of just a very brief overview of many mansions, and hopefully we can get into some of our specific programs and ways the community can help. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And next up we have Leslie Esrich. She's the Senior Case Manager at Lutheran Social Services. And Leslie has one of the tougher jobs, I think, in the community in that their location sees the street homeless, that if you've fallen out and don't have a home anymore, you're living in your car, Lutheran Social Services is one of the few places now available to you in this community. My office, Project Understanding in Ventura, is one of those types of places. Simi Valley has its own called the Samaritan Center in Oxnard as well. But that's where kind of the rubber meets the road in some social service settings, and Leslie's got that job. So Leslie, tell us a little bit about your office, what you guys do, and how you're doing with it all.
I'm tired, thank you. Lutheran Social Services, as Rob said, does serve the local homeless population, but that's just one of about 7 different things we do. We do have a site. They can come in every morning except for Thursday. They can get a hot shower, get coffee, they can get a lunch, they can do their laundry. We have resources for them. We also do emergency assistance, and this is a lot of things under that umbrella. If someone calls and needs rental assistance, they're at risk of being evicted, we can help with that. Utility assistance, clothing vouchers, food vouchers, the list goes on and on. We also oversee some transitional housing. We have 22 units in Ventura County. So for those who do find themselves unhoused, we have a transitional living program, which I happen to be the program director for that. And we get them in there, and we do some very heavy case management to try to turn things around for them and get them back on their feet into permanent housing. We do have, which most of you probably know, the Meal and Shelter Program. We have a lot of wonderful seniors. I think we have about 1,000 volunteers, many of which are seniors, that participate in this program. And every night of the year, 365 nights, you can get a hot meal in the Conejo Valley. And it's served by wonderful, gracious people at 7 different houses of faith. Our program director for that is Deanna Ortuno. Many of you know her. She also oversees our winter shelter, which is 4 months out of the year when it gets really cold, December 1st through March 31st. And again, that's at Houses of Faith. We have volunteers that come in and help her oversee the individuals that need a warm place to sleep at night.
Thank you. That's a good synopsis and explains why you're so tired. So another reason why we all tend to be in the social services a bit tired is because of the nature of our economy right now. Nonprofit work is difficult in a good economy because you're having to fundraise at the same time you're doing the work as well. I'm going to pick on myself at first and talk about a little bit what are we doing over the last few years given the downturn of the economy to make ends meet. What does that look like? Just like in a family, when a job is lost or resources dry up or you even get a cutback in your pay from your employer, you have to make changes within your home. For our agencies, we have to do the same thing and still somehow figure out a way to provide for all of these families and individuals that come to our doors who are having a greater crisis than we are. It's an interesting dance every day, a good way to put it. About 2 years ago when I came on to Project Understanding, we were having a tough time financially. And we really had to take a hard look at every one of our programs, how we are doing those programs. And one of the overlays that I was able to do that helped guide us along was what was a hand-up program, what was a handout program. And that allowed us to make some significant shifts in how we gave services to the community. Not all the community was happy about that because those that are used to a handout are used to a handout. And when you change that, and picture for yourselves your own adult children, grandchildren, when you finally stop giving something they shouldn't have in the first place, they do what? Yeah, it's tantrum time on one end, but they do survive, and they're then required to learn a new way. And so as social service agencies, part of our job is to, okay, you know what, there is no more free stuff, but here's what we're going to do. If you're willing to partner with us in a process of your life being changed, then let's do that. But for now, there's no more free stuff. And what we will do as an incentive is if you want to partner with us in the things that you need, just like Leslie mentioned, a shower and all of these types of things, then you have to agree to a case management process to move your life along a continuum from A to B to C to D. It's a very slow process, and for some of our clients, just getting them to take a shower is step one. And that's a big step for those that are out there, especially if they have some sort of mental health issues. It's a big step. Because it's easy for us to think, oh, we're going to get everybody housed. Rick's got room. They'll build another one at Habitat. It's like, well, but that person may not be ready for housing yet. They have to go through these many, many steps beforehand. So that's part of our jobs. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask each of you guys, how have you dealt with the financial challenges? What has changed in your agencies, both from a positive and maybe a negative standpoint? And this helps the audience see what can they do? What can we do as a community to help meet the need in this hand-up process? So Stacy, I'll start with you. What's new and exciting, and what had to go?
Yeah, it is. It's been a challenge. Every year is a challenge, as Rob mentioned, in the nonprofit world, for one reason or another. Certainly at Habitat, it goes up and down. With every closed door, there is an open window. And so we've made some changes. We have a wonderful, wonderful, extremely dedicated and hardworking, small but mighty staff. We have really dedicated Not a lot of people, but a few people who do the work of a lot of people. But I've also leaned very heavily on our board of directors, who have also really stepped to the plate, both in terms of just volunteering their time and their expertise, but also their resources. And then, of course, Habitat's all about volunteers throughout our organization, whether it's on our construction site where they're most visible, but we also have a number of working committees. We have our construction materials, our home improvement store based in Oxnard. We're opening a second one in Simi Valley in 2012, just so you know. We have volunteer opportunities throughout our organization, and we desperately need volunteers, because without our volunteers, some of our work just wouldn't get done. Some things would just have to stop because we just don't have the resources to do them. One of the most significant changes that we had to make was to slow down our new construction. New construction is extremely expensive in Ventura County, California. We're blessed to live in such a beautiful place, but it is very expensive to build new housing. So while we have enough land to build 30 houses, we could build 30 houses today if only we had the money, which we don't. So we're building 2 homes at a time right now, and very proud to be doing that. There are a lot of builders out there that would love to be building 2 houses right now, so I'm proud to say that we are, and doing them quite well. And we dedicated 2 homes in Piru this fall, and we've got 2 under construction in Oxnard. So we're steadily moving along, but it is so frustrating to know that we could be housing 30 more families, if only. But that's okay, because like I said, with that opportunity, we're slowing down our construction and continuing to look for creative ways to fund new construction. The biggest drop-off there, as you can imagine, is in corporate giving and foundation giving. I think I'm probably preaching to the choir a little bit, but people know that that's where the belt's really gotten tightened, was in those kinds of grants that are out there that we used to be able to get. Now it's gotten so competitive and the dollars are so restricted. It's harder and harder to get those bigger gifts that fund new construction. So recognizing that we have this wonderful pool of construction volunteers who are so ready to work, as I mentioned before, we rolled out this new rehab and repair program, which are lower cost projects, but still serving families, still supporting people in need, and empowering our volunteers. And they're, typically 3- and 4-day projects that can be done with maybe 1 or 2 or 3 groups of volunteers at a much lower dollar cost. So we've started this program. It's gone quite well. We've done 3 so far, and we're continuing to look for both volunteers but also applicants who might be deserving recipients of that program. So we're trying to be creative, still continuing to serve as many families as we can, and when the economy turns around, we'll get all those homes under construction as fast as we can.
So a neat gift that you could give one of your neighbors, if you have a neighbor that can't afford to fix up the front of their home, would be to refer them to Habitat to be on that list. Again, a hand up not just to that family, but to that neighborhood. And it's no charge. It's just taking that action of, I'm going to notice something in my neighborhood and there's something that can be done about it through a wonderful, I think we talked about that program 3 years ago of how would that work. And so it's neat to see it here. So thank you for doing that. Rick, you've got your hands full. These large housing complexes that take lots of money to run and full of people. And if one of them were to fail, that's a lot of new homeless. How do you fund all of that in this tough time? He's like, oh my gosh, how do I fund all this stuff? But you do. You are very creative, and we've talked about this and the challenge of the if you will, the dollars from the government that Stacy just mentioned are disappearing. So how do you do all of that and still sleep at night?
Well, I don't get too much sleep at night, so that's part of the problem. But no, it's been very challenging. If you remember, it wasn't so long ago, but remember that time in those 2006, 2007, 2004, where all the real estate prices were going up almost on a daily basis. The economy was roaring, unemployment was low, real estate prices were doubling and tripling every couple of years. For us, that was a very difficult time because we, in trying to develop new affordable housing, to buy land, to buy apartment buildings, were competing against all the private developers out there. And we were not successful. Why would someone sell to us when they can sell to a private developer who's got cash on hand and can close escrow in 30 days? As the economy turned down, a lot of those land prices and apartments became available, became much more affordable. But unfortunately, at the same time, all the financing that we rely from the local, state, and federal government has either disappeared or become restrictive or has become very, very competitive. So we've had to adjust a number of things. I'm happy to say, though, I think we have been very creative in our approach. We were able to finally get all the financing for our new Hillcrest Project. Our Hillcrest Project here in Thousand Oaks is a 60-unit new apartment complex, beautiful design. It's going to be in 5 different buildings, a standalone community center. But the cost is $25 million. And we've been working on this project for over 5 years. We were able to get one of the financing called tax credits over the summertime. We had one of the highest scores in the state. It's a statewide competition. But because of the way that we developed it, the way that it's made up, we had a very high score. Half of the units are going to be reserved for homeless families. But part of the reason we were able to get it was that we asked for less than we could, and that amount was made up by here, the City of Thousand Oaks. So we were able to get it financed because the City of Thousand Oaks committed more of their local money to make sure that this project could go forward. And it is going forward. We started construction last month. It's going to be about a 12-month process, and we hope to have it finished and available for lease-up next December. So that's been a very positive thing over the last couple of years. We have also looked at other areas. Traditionally, we've developed all of our housing in Thousand Oaks and Simi Valley. A year and a half ago, we decided to look in other communities in Ventura County, and we were able, this past year, to develop new housing in Oxnard, our D Street project, which is on D Street. And this is housing specifically for a growing homeless population called the transition-aged youth population. It's youth between ages 18 and 24 who are homeless and have a disability, which is, if you think about being homeless when you're only 18, it's not a good way to start your adult life. So this particular housing, we moved into this new market, rehabbed an apartment complex, and we're currently leasing that up for this population. But it's been challenging, and as we go forward, it's going to be difficult to continue developing more affordable housing, and yet we need more affordable housing. 3 years ago, we had a waiting list of about 500 households, individuals on that waiting list. That amount now is close to 900. And again, that's mostly people here in Thousand Oaks, the Conejo Valley, looking for housing. So internally, we've been able to retain all of our service programs. Like Rob, though, is like Project Understanding, we looked at all the programs that we do for our residents, restricted them a bit, and made sure that they were necessary, and that we had the appropriate staffing. But we've increased staffing through volunteers. We have a lot more volunteers, not only in our programs, but in our offices, for our special events, and other things that we do. So we're much more volunteer-oriented now than we had been a couple of years ago, which I think is a positive thing. I know a lot of people in the community are looking for volunteer opportunities, and we're happy to give them to them. And we're quite surprised the ability for them to kind of step in and really do a great job. So it has been tough. Grants and donations have been hard. I think our grants probably have gone down a bit, but I'm happy to say this year our individual giving has gone up. We're diversifying. We're getting more and more donations from a wider variety of people. So that's been good.
I think to educate everyone a little bit, you mentioned it took a 5-year period for this project to get off the ground. Would that be a typical time, especially on a new build for housing?
It's not untypical. It's more than we wanted, but it takes a lot of time. When you buy land, you have to not only acquire the land, but you have to have the zoning right. You have to design the project. You have to get all the financing. These things take a number of years. So ideally, we'd like to do these in a 3-year period. This took 5 years. So you have to be persistent as well.
And for
So
a
it's not untypical, but it was a little bit more than we wanted.
And for a project that is, let's say you're purchasing an existing building, apartment building, what's the transition time to get it to where you need it for your purposes in housing? What's that?
Yeah, here it's a much quicker time period. By the time we acquire the property, we have all the money to acquire it, we then do quite a bit of rehab. Because usually the places that we're acquiring are very run down, and these are the places that we look for. The community eyesores, the properties that are run down, that are overcrowded, that have gangs, drug dealings, graffiti, things like that. So by the time that we acquire it, our rehab takes usually between 3 and 6 months. And then once it's fully rehabbed, then we repopulate it with our target population. So it's a much quicker time frame than a new construction project.
And I think it's good for everyone to hear this of, wow, we need all this housing, but what does it take to do housing? It's not a magic wand. Even if we build a building, and as Rick and everyone else sees, when we do have a piece of property, it then has to be managed. And the cost, the ongoing yearly cost to manage any of these complexes is extensive, and it doesn't happen with just a simple grant.
Yeah, I should add, all of our properties, all 12 existing ones, we manage as well. And all of the properties have on-site managers, and we do all the income or all the applicant qualifications and all the janitorial and maintenance work, so we can make sure that these complexes are very clean, well-run, well-maintained, because they're really a community asset. And we intend to have these as community assets for many, many years. So we do all of that as well.
Thank you. So Leslie, you operate on a lot of volunteers within your organization, especially locally. I mean, Lutheran Social Services is national, but you have a fairly small office here, correct?
Correct.
And how many volunteers do you think you have there?
Oh, my goodness. At the office site, we probably have 7 or 8. But off-site, as I mentioned earlier, 1,000.
And how many could you use?
Maybe double that.
Again, how can we give? And as Rick had mentioned, and even with Stacy, our organizations operate on volunteers. Yes, we have some paid staff, but there has never been the money out there for nonprofits to have this size of staffing that a business or even the public sector would have. But in nonprofits, we do operate on volunteerism, and that's why you'll see a lot of volunteer coordinator positions available. So somebody who wants to volunteer to oversee volunteers is very important for each of our organizations. They're tough to come by because you have to be extremely admin and pleasant because you're working with volunteers. And volunteers are a tough bunch because they're not required to be anywhere. And when you're counting on volunteers, it's really important to have the right group because your business is functioning on the work of their hand. I know over and over at our office we'll have somebody that they're excited, I'm going to come volunteer. You get them all trained up and they last 3 days because, I got a job. Or this, or that. I mean, it's just because we're down the food chain as far as what they're willing to do. But when you get that gold volunteer, oh my gosh, does it change your organization? Because that person knows people, and they bring in their friends. And it just all of a sudden you're able to blossom in an area that you had no idea was going to work because you had no one to do it and no funds to be doing it. So I think about Stacy, with your organization, without volunteers, Habitat for Humanity doesn't exist because it's based on that.
The volunteers are a huge part of why our homes are affordable at all. Because if we had to pay for the labor to build our homes, they wouldn't be affordable anymore. They're in every aspect of everything we do. Our office volunteers, I had no idea when I came to Habitat that there were people who were willing to volunteer to do filing. And I can't tell you how grateful I am for volunteers who are willing to do filing. It's wonderful. It's amazing. Volunteers who are willing to go constantly on the lookout for property for us to build houses on. Volunteers who are willing to meet with prospective families, both for our new construction and our Preserve a Home program, and interview them and find out what their needs are. Volunteers touch every single thing that we do. We would not be here without volunteers. Absolutely.
Thank you. So Leslie, what are the challenges that your organization has faced in this last couple of years with the downturn?
Similar to the other 2 agencies here, we've found a reduction in our city contracts and our government contracts. They've reduced the amount they allow, and the private donors, or private grants rather, same thing. We have, interestingly enough, as Rick mentioned, our private individual donors, almost recognizing that that has happened, they have stepped up and shown their support by increased personal giving. Another thing that happened negatively was we lost Catholic Charities in Conejo Valley. That was an organization we collaborated with very heavily. They were on the same site as we were, and they did pretty much what we did. So every client that they served all of a sudden looked to LSS. So we add our client load plus now Catholic Charities with no increase in income. We were not able to increase our staffing, so we rely even more heavily on our volunteers. For every dollar that we get donated, 89 cents goes back to the community. We have about 11 cents on the dollar that we use for staff and just operations, which is very, very low. And the way we can keep it that low and still manage to meet the needs of all the clients coming through is because of our volunteers. In the last year and a half, we've also started the transitional program I mentioned earlier in Ventura County, and that's because there are so many families with children that found themselves homeless, and we would put them in our transitional program, and that, as I said, opened up about a year and a half ago.
And you have a new pilot program that's in collaboration with our organization going on right now. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Home to Stay?
You probably could tell us better than I could, but I will tell you. Home to Stay is a great program. One of the big pushes we have right now within our agency is to really focus on case management. We want to make sure that everyone who we give one of our very limited pieces of resource to is able to benefit from that, but doesn't show up at our doorstep 6 months later because they're in the same situation. And one of the ways that we found that's most effective is by case management. So the program Rob mentioned earlier will take people that we help with rental assistance, and we pair them with a mentor family. And this family helps them with all sorts of life skills, from budgeting to just helping them with their just day-to-day aspects to life, what they have to do, and walks with them, contacts them once a week, once a month, but stays with them for up to 2 years. And it has been shown that there is a decrease in people having to go back and needing services if they have this support system around them. So the collaboration is between Project Understanding and LSS with support from United Way, and we're starting this new program.
So with a little story around that program, kind of going back a few years, I remember as I was thinking about preparing for this, we had a gentleman, an older gentleman, I think he was around 75, 80 years old, that owned a store here in Thousand Oaks. And I knew him personally just because of the type of business that he had. And he was, in a sense, homeless in our community. He lived in the back of his store. Well, one day this gentleman was in the newspaper with a picture of him and his dog. It got a lot of attention. Well, the dog did. That's why you'll see when homeless are out on the street, they have a dog with them because it brings more attention than the person, which is unfortunate. But what this person did was, with that in the newspaper, all of a sudden there was an awareness here in Thousand Oaks. Okay, we know we have homeless people, but here's this elderly gentleman with his dog out on the street. What do we do? And immediately there's this push to, let's give money. Well, that's an okay thing, but where is that money going? What does it look like? What does he really need? Does he know how to, as Leslie mentioned, budget? Because he's ended up in a situation that is not good. And there's always this deep story behind any person that we find that's about to be homeless or in one of those situations of a pathway that led them to where they are. So with this gentleman, remember all this money came in, and we started talking, having a conversation from the city standpoint of we should have a fund. Because one guy is going to get all this money, and what's it going to do? And does that make sense? And so I think that was, if I remember back, Rick, that was the birthing of the Conejo Valley. What do they call the fund here for? Okay, so we have a fund. There isn't any money in it, though.
No, I'm happy to say there actually is some money in
Excellent.
it. I found that out this morning. Not much, but there's some.
Okay. So we have, And this fund was modeled after the fund that the city of Ventura has through their Ventura Social Services Task Force. And the fund there generally has around $2,000–3,000 a month in it, which is able to assist 2 to 3 families every month from either going homeless or homeless and getting them back in. It takes on average about $750 to keep someone from going into homelessness. A very small amount of money to make a huge change in someone's life. And so one of the challenges that every community sees is, okay, we can start a fund and we can do this, but do we have to stand somebody on the street with a puppy to get the fund funded properly? We don't want to do that. So there's avenues to resource that fund, and that's the community. That's with other groups, like the Downtown Rotary in Ventura has committed $20,000 for the next year to our fund in the city of Ventura to help keep people off the street. And they're going to start sharing what we're doing there with other Rotaries around Ventura County. And with Rotary, it could become a national piece of what they're doing. Again, putting business and community behind the things that we do need. Now, the value of these dollars, especially when you match them with an agency that's kind of looking at where the money's going, if you're a family that's about to lose their home and you need that $750, well, let's say we were to give you that $750. What happens next month if your budget isn't in order? Well, you're going to come back again. So when we look at that whole hand-up, hand-out piece, the hand-up piece is let's take a look at your world, which is tough. Who wants to go into a social service place and put out all their paperwork on a table with somebody they don't know? It's hard, but we have to be good stewards of the donations that come in. We want to help this family move up as opposed to wobble for the next 3 months and still end up homeless. How do we get them on a list for Habitat for a Home? How do we get them on a list to Many Mansions or the other area housing opportunities that are out there? It is through that initial development of a relationship because they came in because they needed rental assistance. So these are the dynamics that we deal with every day where we really have to be thinking about every dollar that goes out. Why is it going out? To whom is it going to? And does it make sense? Again, in your own families, if you're supporting a child in a home somewhere because they can't make their rent, how long can that keep up? At some point, you have to have that very tough conversation of what are you going to do to sustain yourself? And that's a very hard conversation. And sometimes we'll have families refer their tag-along children to us for us to have that conversation with them. But that's what our job is, and we can do it. It's not personal. We're not family, and we just start saying, okay, what is this going to look like for you to move up and out from underneath the nest? Because parents are running out of money in some cases, too, where they just can't support their extended family the way they have in the past. Okay, so I challenge everybody to talk about an impact story of what's happened in their community with the people that they're working with. It really speaks to the gift of giving, especially in the social service world model. So, Stacy, we didn't even talk about this at all, but I think you have one because I know Felipe had one. It's a good story, too.
I don't know what Felipe's story is going to be, though. I'll
just give me somebody that's really received help from you guys and the blessing that it was for the family and for the givers, for all those volunteers.
Yeah. Well, the most recent and I think obvious example, especially here in Thousand Oaks, is the home that we built right here on Hillcrest Drive. Really wonderful family who moved into that home just about a year ago. They're going to have their first Christmas in the home this year. They are a wonderful family who were living here in Thousand Oaks, had been for many years. Mom and dad both working multiple jobs to make ends meet, living a family of 4 in 1 bedroom of a 3-bedroom house. So there were about 17 people living in the house so that they could afford to live there. They shared then 1 kitchen, 2 bathrooms, all of these people in this house making ends meet, not complaining, just this is the way it is and this is life. And they applied for their Habitat home and accepted with vigor the opportunity to sweat equity on their house. Rosa, the homeowner, was out there every day. Construction volunteers were out there that she wasn't working, overseeing as well as working, making sure that her home was built exactly the way it should be. She knows it inside and out. She would know how to fix anything better than most of our construction volunteers, I'm certain. when they moved in, they have two young girls, both attending public school here in Thousand Oaks, and they were concerned that the girls would be lonely. You know, here they were used to living with all kinds of people. There was always somebody to play with, always somebody around, and now they had their own rooms for the first time in their lives that they weren't sharing not only with each other, but not even with their parents. They had their own space. And so Mom was really concerned that they would be lonely, that they would be upset, they wouldn't want to be in their own rooms. And I talked to her a couple of months after they moved in, and she said, "Do you know what they do? They don't want to go anywhere after school. They just want to go home. And when they get home, do you know what they do? They go in their room and they close the door." And I think she was a little hurt that not only were they not lonely, but they really, really liked their alone time. And I thought, how wonderful for them to have space. They love having friends over. They love having sleepovers. They love their house. But even better than that part of the story, which I love, I just love seeing our families blossom in their new homes, is the fact that they continue to volunteer. Rosa is now a family partner for one of the families whose her home is under construction in Oxnard right now. Nice. So she's going to walk alongside this family while they complete their sweat equity, while they do their homeowner education classes, make sure that they meet all of the criteria that Habitat expects of our homeowners, and helps guide them to homeownership. So she's transforming other lives while she's herself been the recipient of a life transformation. So it's a blessing. We have a million stories. We do, from every aspect, from a volunteer aspect, from our homeowners, from our new Preserve a Home recipients. It's just wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah,
that's a great story. Rick.
Well, Stacy actually reminded me of another story, so I'm going to tell you kind of two quick stories concerning two of our residents that have lived at Stoll House. Stoll House is our transitional housing program. It's an apartment complex, but it's specifically for homeless families, usually homeless mothers with children, which again is one of our growing homeless populations. And I was kind of reminded, I was talking to this mother that had lived there a couple of years ago at Stoll House, and the program is basically you come in, you move in, and we've had lots of community volunteers that have donated furniture and refrigerators and food and gifts and different things like that. And you do extensive case management, you work on your life problems. You know, why did you become homeless? What are some barriers to being transitioning to permanent housing? Maybe it's education, maybe it's jobs, maybe it's an abusive spousal relationship, lots of different reasons. So we work on that. But this mother was telling me that when they moved into Stoll House, she kept noticing that one of her kids kept going into the refrigerator and getting out milk. You know, like all the time, all night, next day, all these different things. And finally she said, well, why are you drinking so much milk? What you know, what's attracting you to all this milk? And the child finally said that it was such a wonderful feeling to actually open up a refrigerator and get a cold beverage, because they had been living in their car or elsewhere and they never had a refrigerator. And it was just a unique tactile experience in getting something cold and being able to drink something. We've had lots of stories, a lot of success stories at Stoll House. This one woman recently has just graduated from our program. She came to us, she was 20 years old, had 3 children, had been in a gang, had a criminal record, had been using drugs, had lots of legal issues surrounding that. And she came to us, and at Stoll House, you live in a gated community. You're kept away from a lot of those outside influences that you had before. You work with a case manager, and she was able to deal with a lot of these life problems. But one of the things, she wanted to enroll into this program to become a nurse's aide, or a nurse's assistant, a nurse's aide. I think it was a program at Moore Park. But the program required her to have specific nursing shoes and scrubs, nursing outfit kinds of things. So, and she didn't have that, and she didn't have any money for that, and the funding that we had wouldn't pay for that. So I mentioned that at a presentation, I think at a Rotary Club once, just mention that. Come home, or come back to the office that day. I had the Rotary had taken up a collection for that. One of the Rotary members' church called me 2 days later, wanted to donate these things, and my board of directors on their own raised money. So all of a sudden I had all this money coming in just to buy this lady nursing shoes and scrubs. Well, she got that, and I'm happy to say I just found out that she had graduated the program and got a job in that area and has graduated her program and has transitioned into one of Many Mansion's permanent housing sites and has a job. So that was a good story. Yeah.
So Leslie, as we were preparing the whole idea of this meeting, a situation came up on the street that was connected to yours. So I'm going to have you tell that story because it just happened and is so relevant, and it involves a senior, and we need to paint the picture of we have seniors that are homeless in our community, and I think this gentleman really captures what it's like out there and what was able to happen as a community.
That's right, and a couple of the ladies who were instrumental in the success of this story are in this room today. We had a gentleman come in, Bernie, and he shuffled in his walker. Clearly had had a stroke. He was in his 70s, and he had his Steelers baseball cap on. I think it was Steelers. And he would come in every day, and he would sit there, and he'd have coffee, and he'd get something to eat. And our program director did an intake, Deanna, did an intake on him, and was very concerned.
Okay, and I'm going to stop you right there because I want to reinforce something to everyone. So he's homeless, he's 70, he's had a stroke, and he's walking with a walker.
And he's with a walker on the streets.
Now think about that. If you were in that condition, if one of your parents, your grandparents, your children was in that condition, and he was on the street in this community, that's an amazing thing to me, but it happens every day. And when we look at the gift, the whole subject of today, the gift of giving, listening to this story of all the different ways that giving can happen to impact a life that would have, and this gentleman is somebody we call it one of the most at-risk people on our street. There's actually statistical things about that we won't even bother getting into, but he is the most at risk of someone that won't last long, and here we are going into winter. So sorry about the interruption, but I wanted to highlight
the story.
Yeah, highlight.
You guys have a good picture of what transpired. Anyways, we did the only home Bernie had at that point was LSS. And he came every day, and we pushed the rules. We let him stay there as late as we could. We were panicked, knowing it's getting cold at night. There's no way this gentleman, this senior, should be out on the streets. So Deanna, right after she did the intake, was at a year-round shelter program meeting. And a woman there by the name of Mary was in the meeting, and she was sharing the story. She said, I've put him on. We filled out the referral packet for SF Village, which is a Many Mansions disabled supportive housing complex, but it will be at least 3 months minimum because there's just not enough housing. And we cannot let Bernie stay out on the streets. We have to do something. Well, one of the ladies, Mary, who was there, ran into Bernie, exactly where Deanna said he would be. And I received a call probably a day or two later from a gal named Nancy, and she said, there is a gentleman on the streets in Thousand Oaks. And before she went any further, I knew it was Bernie. I said, I know, we just encountered him. She said, we can't let this happen. I said, I agree. I absolutely agree. And she said, may I help? I said, absolutely. So this wonderful woman and her friend, Mary, coordinated an effort with Bernie. They put him in a motel for a couple days while they were scrambling to find longer-term housing. And the nice story is Bernie is now in an assisted living program. He shares a bedroom with another gentleman. He absolutely does not complain. Loves the food at this place. He goes to bed warm and he wakes up warm and he's safe. But we could not have done that on our own. It took the community and their caring and their love and their concern to come along and partner with us. So that's my good story.
Yeah, and it is a fabulous story, and it really paints the picture of the impact each of us, without money, can do with someone within our community. And it doesn't have to be a homeless person standing out on the street. It can be a next-door neighbor that's really struggling that you know about, that hasn't asked for help, but you just know the situation. It could be a family member that's a distant family member that you know is having a terrible time. And if we start thinking differently on how to give to one another, this is a gift of hope. This is a gift of relationship. I mean, here's Bernie that no one knew who he was, but he got the gift of, if you will, community love through this interaction, and the gift of hope, the gift of life, because he's now not going to die on our streets, because that's what happens if no one pays any attention. And then everybody, we hear on the news from in a national standpoint, how is it possible that this person died on our streets? Because we were all busy doing what we do. And so this challenges us to really pay attention to what's going on around us. And it challenges us to step outside of our comfort zones when it comes to giving in a new way. As opposed to going to, as I talked about, Target to buy the scented candle for that person, I'm now going to have to engage in a relationship with someone that's having a really tough time. And it's not easy. All of our jobs, I mean, we encounter folks that are tough customers. But through that process of working with them and getting to know them and them getting to know us, amazing things happen. And Bernie resolved because the community decided to resolve Bernie and make it happen. They came together. And no money changed hands other than a couple of nights in a motel room. Someone, paid for that. Usually we have money in our agencies to do that a little bit, but it's not sustainable. We have to find other ways. So since we're talking about giving, yes, question.
This is the first time I work with Leslie and Diana with Bernie, and it's the first time I volunteer a lot, but this is the first time I've had experience with a person that was homeless actually on the street when it was rainy and cold that first weekend. It was so rainy. And he did say to me once, you can't imagine how cold your legs can get when they get wet. And then you're lying out there. I said, oh, that's okay. But anyway, the thing that made this work was Lutheran Social Services was already there, involved. Mary happens to go to my church, the Caneo Unitarian Church out in Newberry Park. You guys, Project Understanding was involved. Many Mansions was involved. And today I got an email from St. Pascal's because I had been by there about them sending people by. So it was not a person or an agency. It was everybody working together and taking the time. So things can happen if people just, everybody gives a little bit.
Correct.
So it was a pleasure to work with all these agencies, and I had not done that before. So.
Well, thank you, Nancy. And she's exactly right. We, as nonprofits, work together a lot. I mean, we talk to each other, and we sit down and try and think about how do we help this one person, especially somebody like a Bernie who we need to do something. We can't, it's not a young person. We can't just wait. But then the reality is we have the younger people, as Rick mentioned, the TAs that are coming out of the foster care system into just homelessness because there is no other choice for them. What do you do? There's so many. Well, one at a time, a Bernie at a time. And so that's the way we don't get overwhelmed. The community doesn't get overwhelmed, but we have to actually make the decision to do one at a time. And as we start adopting the folks that are out on our streets or our neighbors who are having trouble, it's doable. It's an easy problem to resolve if we all collaboratively get on board. So what I want to talk about a little bit is we think we have our hands around, the different ways of giving or volunteering. It's like, you know what, I really don't have time to volunteer to come into a place all the time. There's lots of different options in giving of yourself, and one of the things we talk about in the nonprofit world is your time, your talent, and your treasure. So some of us have time. For seniors, some maybe have more time, or they're too senior and really can't get out to do much. Some have talent. So let's say I'm a senior and I'm a bit disabled, but I have an amazing gift that I've done my whole life, and I want to share that within an organization. What does that look like? And then treasure. What is the treasure that we have? Is it our finances today? Is it an estate that we might possibly leave to nonprofits once we pass? I mean, there's all kinds of amazing ways that we can give, no matter our situation or condition, to have a direct impact and a lasting impact on our community. So, Rick, we had talked earlier about especially the legacy piece of a family that is looking to give and is not quite sure how. And as nonprofits, it's amazing when we are given a legacy gift, so an estate plan, if we're part of this, when that gift comes, what we're able to do just jumps our organizations radically sometimes. Or it's what helps us make the rent that month, literally. But tell us a little bit about what that means to give in an estate capacity.
Estate capacity, sure. Well, especially if anyone has real estate and land or apartment buildings and you'd like to give that, we would be happy to manage that for you. We'd manage it. You can keep the money, and then when you pass on, we could then convert that to affordable housing. Something to think about. Hasn't happened yet. I bring that up all the time. I'm waiting for that to happen, but we're due. We're due, absolutely. And a lot of donors have said, and this is tough times for a lot of people, especially people that have saved all their lives, have retired, but because of the economy, the stock market, a lot of their savings has gone down, and they've cut back on their giving. Nevertheless, they can give, as Rob mentioned, through gifts, through wills, through trusts, through other types of things, where they're not necessarily giving right now, but eventually they would. And that's a major thing for us. That's something that we want to grow and continue to nurture, because those one-time gifts, those larger gifts, do help us, especially in the housing development area. We're always looking to raise money for housing development, because although eventually we'll get financing on a project, a lot of that money up front we have to fund. That money to maybe purchase the land or pay for the costs or the different studies and things like that. So that definitely helps with our housing development program. But there's lots of very innovative ways. We generally refer people to attorneys, which is a good thing. I'm an attorney, so you should always, but you should go to an estate attorney for people that are interested in that, because the rules are quite complicated. But there's ways that you can help immediately through a certain type of gift that you have immediate benefit for, but at the same time, it's not quite the cash drain that a cash donation is. So a lot of different ways. I want to somewhat go back, though. One thing that does disturb me, and I just saw this over the weekend, and I see this at this time of the year all the time in front of places like Bristol Farms, Whole Foods, Best Buy, things like that. I see charities out there, supposed charities, from some Los Angeles homeless organization or something, and sure enough, people are giving them money all the time to support that. We see a picture of someone who's homeless to some organization we've never heard of, and we just feel the tug to help support that, because we don't want people to be homeless. I guess I would just encourage people that there's a lot of wonderful local organizations, and that's the organizations to give your donations to, because you can see how they use their money. You know the organization, you can trust them, you see their benefit. And I know Los Angeles has a lot of need. It has a lot more need than Ventura County, but nevertheless, unless you really know the organization, I think it's best to give locally. These are your neighbors as well, so just put a pitch in for that.
That's an excellent point, and we're going to actually talk about panhandling a little bit. I look at them as professional panhandlers, but with nice signs. Backing it up a little bit from there, though, because we'll go into that, we are blessed to have an agency called the Ventura County Community Foundation here in Camarillo. That location, if you're ever interested in knowing more about how to give at that level, that's what they do. They will structure things with you and your tax attorney and lawyers, those kind of things. All the options that are out there. We do happen to have a building that was given to us in a trust. The folks are still alive, and they earn money off of that building while they're here, and once they pass, we will retain title to the building. But it was a beat-up building, and they didn't want to deal with it, and it was a way for them to get it off of their books with no tax consequences, and it blessed us and the community through the housing.
Yeah, I wanted to add, because the Ventura County Community Foundation, you can actually donate money and set up a family trust with them, and then that trust, they would administer it, and they can give grants to organizations. And we get a number of grants from these family trusts, specific things maybe to help Latino children in educational programs, That's through the Destino Fund. We've had programs for our Stoll House, specifically to help battered women. So that's a great organization where you don't have to go through the hassle of deciding who to give the money to. They administer all of that, make sure that the people are legitimate. So,
Yes, sir.
You mentioned panhandling, and I'm probably going to get to this, but it occurred recently. I've seen this a couple of times, and I know other people have. There's a woman in Thousand Oaks who has 3 little children, and she appears at Albertsons or Vaughn's or whatever. I mean, it's just heartbreaking, these 3 little toddlers. But I noticed that she seems to move around. She has a route, so to speak. But I'm wondering, what should our position be? Is, you care. You say, oh, my God, what do I do? Is there a step we should take other than giving her money?
Absolutely. And this is a huge question and a challenge for not just Thousand Oaks, but the nation. Panhandling is just one of the things that's always been and probably always will be, because this is America, and if you want to stand on the street and hold up a sign and ask for money and people give it to you, capitalism 101. That being said, there are legal rules around panhandling depending on the city and the community, and this is there's so many pieces of this. We could have a seminar on just panhandling all by itself. And the meeting I was at before I was here today, we were talking about panhandling, and tonight I will be talking another meeting in the west side of Ventura about panhandling. That being said, for this, and I'll use this as an example, this woman and her 3 kids. Number one, we don't know it's her kids, but it could be. This is a family that this is the way they've determined they're going to raise some money. This is Thousand Oaks. It's fairly affluent, and money is still given because 3 kids draw better than 1 kid. The movement around might be to avoid the Department of Children's Services, because if you stay one place too long, usually somebody shows up that they want to avoid. Big picture on all panhandlers, and Rick kind of made mention of this, it's hard to give your money away wisely on the spot. When we see that, it's a heart pull. It's an emotion that, okay, there's this perceived need by this family, and I'm going to give them X because I feel so badly. Part of our job is to educate and say, you know what, maybe you give that person a referral to, and depending on the community you're in, Lutheran Social Services. Are you familiar with the housing options that are out there? Did you know that there is a shelter available every single night right now? You start putting those things out, and what you'll find when you encounter that person, if you are willing to, and have a dialogue, is, oh yeah, I know where the shelter is. Oh yeah, I know who Lutheran Social Services is. And they kind of just wave you off, and they move on because they know you're not going to give them money. You're smarter. The emotion's not there anymore. And so the challenge for us as a population and a community is to be educated to there are options for that family. They're generally choosing not to avail themselves of the option. I encountered a gentleman last night out in front of a store holding a sign. I said, did you know that there's a shelter? And he was literally half a mile from the shelter. No, I didn't. And I said, okay, well, it's just, and he goes, do you have the address? I said, no, I don't. Well, how am I possibly going to get there without the address? And he started to argue verbally with me. I said, no, it's just down the street. It's inconceivable for me to get to an address that if you don't have the address, how am I going to get there? And so he just went off on a tangent. And I'm used to this. I mean, it's really common. And I think, okay, he's got some mental health issues probably. And I just nodded my head and went on my merry way. He wasn't open to the answer to his problem at the moment. One of the things that we see, and Bernie's a good example, that story about Bernie is relationship was developed with Bernie, and it solved everything. The immediate crisis went away, and now the long term kicks in. The immediate crisis for this woman and her 3 kids are they really homeless? We don't know the answer to that because we don't know her. She could be doing this for her job. She could be living somewhere, and this is how she's making extra money. We don't know. And so we have to stop and develop a relationship. Now, I don't recommend everyone in this room stopping and talking to all the panhandlers on the street because that can be dangerous. There's some colorful folks out there, very colorful. And so one of the things, and this is, and I brought this as a tool, and you won't be able to see it on TV, I don't think, but this is a little card that the city of Ventura has put out. And I'm just going to read it. It's called Stop Giving Money to Panhandlers, Yes to Charities, No to Panhandling. Helps create a cleaner and safer environment for everyone. And then on the back side of the card, panhandling alternatives. Catholic Charities, Homeless One-Stop Center, Project Understanding, Salvation Army, Turning Point, et cetera, with all the contact information. Here. If you really want help, here. This is where it's going to start. And I never offer anyone a guarantee that we're going to give you help because I don't know their story. I don't know how much they've drawn on the system so far. They may be getting, some families out there, and Leslie, you may know the number of this, there's families, if you're wise and you're a single parent, you can bring in $2,500 a month or so. Is that a good number? Through the various pieces of welfare that exist in especially the state of California. And, of course, that gets into a whole other discussion. We have folks that come specifically to the state because of what we do offer in our social services. And we're broke. And so we as agencies have to take a look at what are we giving and how are we giving it, moving away as best we can from the emotion, where a Bernie, boy, talk about emotion when I heard about this and saw the email, and we all had the same response. We must do something. But, and however, we need to get to know who Bernie is and what's his story. Bernie could have been mentally ill. Bernie could have had a drug problem. Bernie could have been an alcoholic, and that's why we never know. So as we learn about people, then we can figure out where's the best place to refer them, what's the right avenue to have them start in. And one thing that I think the audience and everyone needs to understand, and this is not every panhandler, but the majority of panhandlers that are on our streets, when you give them money, assume that money is going to go buy a large 40-ounce can, because that's what they buy, or a little flask of vodka, or their drug of choice, which is usually meth or heroin around here, or cigarettes. That's it. Now, if they're creative, they might save some of the money for a motel room that night if they're really cold. And they'll cobble their money together, different folks, and they'll get a motel room and then destroy that motel room with 50 people in it. But this is what our money's doing out of our act of compassion, and it actually helps destroy the speed of the destruction of the person that we're giving the money to because we're feeling good about it. And it's a hard conversation. And people will argue with me. I'll speak sometimes to churches, and they say, how could you say give nothing? I said, give the gift of relationship. Give them relationship. Give them your time, and then we'll see. And so there's that process there of giving time. And so for this woman, if I saw her, Jim, I'm one of those that will pull over and say, what are you doing? What do you need? Why are you out here with your 3 children? This is not okay. But again, that's me, and I don't recommend that for most people. And I have a lot of answers in my kit bag, if you will. I can do a lot of referrals. I have numbers in my phone, that kind of thing. But this is a great tool for communities to have so that the population can say, I have something that I can give to that person when I'm feeling the urge to give. Yes, go ahead and give. Yes.
Who paid for the printing of those?
This was done by the city of Ventura. The city of Ventura has a significant challenge that the Conejo Valley doesn't have, is numbers of those that are homeless. Our street homeless numbers in our city and the city of Ventura are probably around 200, where the folks that you see around the Conejo Valley, there may be actually out that you visibly see, would you say 40 or so, 50? And the group in Ventura is a very dynamic group. And very aggressive, more so than here. But folks from Ventura will come visit Thousand Oaks because it's an affluent community. It's like, I akin it to on Halloween, where do you go to get the better candy? You find the neighborhood that's got lots of nice cars and it's flat, so you can cover a lot of territory. Well, I will see people when I'm in the Conejo Valley that are from Ventura, or there's a husband and wife team and they switch off. That way they mix it up with the police departments, and they know what they're doing. They're very good at what they're doing. And going back to the point you made, Rick, of the out-of-towners coming and stumping for their charity, they're standing in front of Bristol Farms. Why? Because of the population that's going and can afford to shop at Bristol Farms. They're not going to get change and $1 bills. They're going to get larger money. So you'll see, panhandlers at Westlake, the 101, those kind of key off-ramps, and they all know, and they're fairly aggressive about their territory, too. It's a whole subculture out there that we work with on a regular basis because the fact is we want to affect their lives as well. There's a reason they're out. They need to have their lives changed. If we stop the panhandling piece, if we're able to cut back the money going to them, guess what happens? They stop panhandling because there's no point. If you're going to work all day long for $5 standing outside, it's just not worth it anymore. And so that's kind of on a community. It's almost like when you talk about the war on drugs. Well, if you had all the drug users stop using drugs, we wouldn't have so much of a war, would we? But that's a same type of thought. So that's the panhandling issue in a short version. What I would say, especially for our senior audience, is if you do pull up and you're in your car and there's a panhandler on the corner, make sure your doors are locked and your windows are up, because they will reach in if they're so inclined. Don't leave your purse sitting on this. Don't even leave your purse sitting on the seat next to you, because that's a reason to break your window to take your purse. Not to panic that all these evil panhandlers are out there, but it does happen, and you don't want to be a victim, and that's a great way to help protect yourself. Don't leave yourself out for something like that. And again, for most seniors, I wouldn't recommend engaging with panhandlers. What we can do, though, is you can volunteer for our organizations, because when we get that person to come in to a location, now you get to engage with them, just as, Bernie wasn't a panhandler, but that's how life came around Bernie. It's a safer environment. You've got some professionals there that are now starting to help that person walk through a process. So that kind of, we got off on the panhandling tangent, but everybody always wants to know about panhandling. I'm going to go back. Let's see, how's our time? We're doing okay? All right. Crazy. So how do, in your world for this audience, giving, you've mentioned, boy, you need a lot of volunteers, and not just people that have to hammer nails and things and know how to cut and glue and paint. What else do you have for opportunities within your organization? And I would put it all the way from the board on down. What do those pieces look like for you guys?
Right. Yeah, a lot of people, especially for talking to seniors specifically, not so excited about getting out there swinging the hammer anymore, although we have a number of seniors who volunteer on our construction sites and welcome their expertise. But we have a lot of volunteer opportunities in our office, office work, anything from computers, data entry, to filing, as I mentioned before, to organizing. We track all of our volunteers that work on our sites, so there's a lot of data entry involved with that. But we have a number of really, I think, very exciting committees to serve on, including our board of directors, who is a wonderful, wonderful bunch of people. We have 15 people on our board of directors, a very nice mix of men and women from across Ventura County, a nice mix of employed and retired individuals who serve on our board. Our board term is 2 years, and they can serve up to 6 years before they have to take a year off. But then we have committees ranging from our finance team, who helps keep us on track financially, looking at our monthly numbers, making sure we're not spending more than we're receiving, and all those good things. We're always looking for people who are interested in helping with financials, particularly people with accounting experience. Current or retired CPAs are most welcome. And then beyond that, a lot of ways to touch our families, whether it's, as I mentioned before, selecting our families for our different construction programs, partnering with our families through the construction process, working in our office, maybe just returning phone calls for people who are interested in being applicants. We get a lot of phone calls. We get a lot of phone calls from people who are just looking for any service, and we try to put them in contact, especially because we get calls from people who are just desperate for the type of housing that maybe Rick or Leslie can find for them that we don't have. So it's fielding those calls, and we try to give each person the attention that they deserve. People are in need, and we want to be able to help. We've got a lot of ways to put you to work. Please don't hesitate. You can check our website, www.habitatventura.com. There we have a volunteer registration where you can look at all of the different volunteer opportunities. If you want to help us raise money, if you want to put on an event, we are always looking for help. We love, love, love the help. Thank you.
Thanks, Stacey. And yeah, event planners. Oh my gosh, all nonprofits need event planners. It takes such weight off of the board, because they're able to guide the board. Because part of the board's job of all of nonprofits technically is a governing piece. Everybody wants to govern, but then there's that going out and getting and giving themselves. So, so if you're thinking about being on a board of directors, remember the 3 G's: give, govern, get, and then there's that 4th G. If not, get off. So. But it really is. It's the challenge on the board. It's a big job, but it's an amazing thing to be part of one of the these organizations of the many. I think there's 2,500 nonprofits ish in the Ventura County area, and here we have just 4. So there's plenty of things out there to do if you want to get involved with these different agencies that, you know, from animals to children to adults to music, you name it, it's out there as far as nonprofits. And all the gift mix of everybody that's listening and watching this, whatever you have to offer, somebody needs in that volunteer setting a tremendous way to give this season of yourself. Or you may know somebody that's looking to give, and you refer them out. I think, and I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but I think United Way has Volunteer Ventura is also another site that we can look at. Correct. Okay, so Volunteer Ventura from the United Way. So if you go on computer, you can just look on there, and they have lots of opportunities. The different cities have generally volunteer sites. So there's no, if you want to volunteer, there's lots of ways to go out there and look. Rick, some quick ways that people can volunteer with you.
Well, lots of different ways. As I said, we're always looking for people to help us in our children's programs. So if you'd like to help tutor the kids, usually elementary school kids, 1 day a week, 3 days a week, 1 day a month, we're looking for volunteers for that. Other ways is just to help arrange a presentation. I think all of us probably give frequent presentations about our organization to different church or temple groups or Rotary groups or service clubs. If you want to help facilitate that, that would be great too. For our Bowls of Hope event, we're always looking to host bowl painting parties with a group or organization. Every event we use about 500 hand-painted bowls. So throughout the year, different groups get together and they paint bowls. That's a nice way to help us out. And as Stacy mentioned, we're always looking for volunteers for office. We need receptionists. And we now have a good slate of volunteer receptionists who do a wonderful job, but we're always looking for more office work as well. We don't do as much. We do service projects where groups come out and do some beautification and some repairs to our apartment complexes. But generally the people that really want to hammer and saw, we refer them over to Stacy's organization.
Yeah, you weren't supposed to take that down. Motivated volunteers. And Leslie, for your organization with Lutheran Social Services, what type of volunteers do you guys need?
Our favorite volunteers are senior volunteers. We find that they have the wisdom, the patience, skill set, understanding. We love to have people in our front office. We have homeless roll-through, as you know. If that doesn't intimidate you, and they're actually pretty wonderful people for the most part, we need someone there to greet them, kind of oversee the laundry and the showers, hand out bags of food to our low-income moms that come in or families that come in, answer the phones, and just develop relationship with our homeless clients. Of course, our meal program, if you cook, if you don't want to go out of the house and do something in an office, we could always use more people to prepare meals, and that you just talk to our program coordinator, Deanna, about that. And I think that's it in a nutshell.
One of the things Leslie just mentioned is the majority of the folks that we work with in our organizations are not the panhandler crowd we talked about where, oh my gosh, it's too scary, I don't want to go there. We have any given community, and this is kind of a rough statistic you can use nationally, whatever the population is, about 1% of that population is the homeless population of the community. So here in Ventura County, we have around 800,000 people. So around 8,000 in any given year are homeless. Well, we don't see those folks because they're not on our street. They're in cars, they're in motels, they're it's called couch surfing. They're staying with friends, family, neighbors, whatever. And so that's a huge and the greater population that most of us work with in getting them to the next step of their challenges. So it's an invisible population unless you're working within our systems because you just don't see them. You wouldn't know they're homeless if you ran into them. We have, I don't know how many children in this community that are homeless. Does anybody have our children number? Leslie, do you know what it is? But I know there's one school in Ventura. Do you know just the population in that one elementary school, Leslie? How many are there? Of the elementary school kids are homeless. Yeah. So those are the challenges we face as organizations and as a community, and we have the ability to impact all of these things just by our giving. And people think, so time talent, and treasure, those three things, and we bring those to the table, we can have a significant impact in a family life, an individual life, and then ultimately community life. And that's a good thing for all of our communities. I think we're running out of time, so I'm going to take some questions. Mel, you had a question?
Yeah, on the homeless, you might want to mention the Kathy Grodnicki's organization.
Okay, so Mel was talking about if you want to know more about homelessness in general, there's a Ventura County Homeless and Housing Coalition, and you look at that online. It has all the numbers and statistics that occur, and it's vechhc.org. I got nods from everybody, so remembering all this stuff in your head. And the county does a count every year, so we actually physically count folks on a given point in time in January, and so you can see the last, I think, 3 years is up there. With some significant numbers, and get an idea of the cross-section of who are our homeless, divided down into males, females, age ranges, things like that. Yes, Jim?
I wanted to ask Stacy, I know that you'll take money and you'll take volunteers, but you also take things, don't you? I mean, donations of furniture, refrigerators, that sort of thing?
Yes, thank you so much. I was really, you sit here and you think, oh, I know what I should have said. I know what I should have said later. We accept donations like that for our homes if they're brand new materials, construction materials in particular for our homes. But we also have our Restore, which is a home improvement store, discount home improvement store. And we accept donations of new and gently used construction materials and furniture. So we have everything in our store from toilets and sinks and bathtubs to windows and doors to bookcases and tables and chairs. We have a truck, so we do pickups all over the county. So if you have a larger item or piece that you'd like to donate, you can call us to arrange a pickup.
And where is your store?
Our store is located at 121 South Rice Avenue in Oxnard. And then, as I mentioned, we are opening a second store in Simi Valley in 2012. So we will have stores in both locations. We'll do pickups from both locations. And you'll find things there literally half the price of Home Depot and Lowe's. Yeah. So not to compete. We're not competing with them because we have a lot of different merchandise. And they are generous donors to us, too. Sometimes when Home Depot or Lowe's are moving merchandise, they'll donate it to us. So we get brand new merchandise from them as well. The telephone number at Habitat is 805-485-6065.
And Habitat's right off the freeway. It's not a trek off the freeway. It's easy to get to.
Just as soon as that Rice interchange is open, I'm gonna have.
It's a little bit of a dance right now, but it's not way down in South Oxnard.
If you take Del Norte, you're good. You're good.
It'll make it very easy.
It is, and it's easy already. It'll be easier when Rice is open.
Yeah, the challenge with Jim, good point on donating stuff, because everybody has a lot of stuff, is being wise about where you're donating it, making sure that what you're donating is good merchandise, not junk. We get bags and boxes of all kinds of things that then we get to throw out, as opposed to you throwing it out because you feel bad about throwing it out. If it's junk to you, it's junk to us. Let's put it that way. Nothing, broken. We don't want to fix things like that. So a person's unworking microwave is also not going to work for us. And Stacy's laughing because she probably gets a lot of this stuff in her place. And so, we just ask folks, if you're going to give to organizations, call first. Make sure they actually need it. The last thing I want when I show up at my office is a big pile out in front, because we get piles of things, because then we have to figure out what to do with it. And even though we have, like with Rick, all these housing places, it doesn't mean he needs a bunch of stuff. It really has to be strategic, and so we try and send the word out of this is what we do need. We need a microwave right now, or we need a refrigerator right now. And very typically it'll come in because we're putting out that specific request. Thrift stores are great places to take the quantity of things out, and there's a lot of thrift stores that back up other nonprofits. So researching the thrift store that you even give to is important, because if you're just giving to a thrift store that supposedly gives to a nonprofit, I'd check with the nonprofit and find out, what are you really getting out of this location, or is it just a profit wrapped around a supposed nonprofit? So you have to be careful no matter where you give and how you give. Any other questions?
You mentioned very briefly about the business community and Rotary and so forth. Could you provide a brief perspective on, is there a strong partnership between business community and Chamber of Commerce? What's their role in all this? Is there a connection?
That's one of the things as a community we're actually working on to increase. There are some cities where the business community drives an amazing amount of resources to nonprofits and the social services that exist in that community. For ours, I think it's a little more hit and miss by individual business. From a collaborative standpoint, we're talking to our chamber and the Visitors Bureau and with the Rotary clubs and Optimists. I mean, I know for all of our organizations, we receive things from all the service organizations throughout the year. But even those memberships are starting to wane. People aren't as active as much. I know the Rotary Club here in Thousand Oaks and Westlake are very active. Downtown Rotary is very active. They do amazing things, but they're also international, so they reach in and then they reach out as well. I think one of the challenges that we're going to have moving forward, and it is increasing to the business community, the awareness that as businesses, they can have an effect on the quality of their community as well. If they want to change and they don't like what they see out on the street, well, they too can partner in all the things that we're doing.
Rob, thank you and the panel very much. It's an absolutely wonderful program. All right, next up on our program is driving safety. Commissioner Loomis.
Thank you, sir. You're an awful hard act to follow, but I figured that the tie-in would work this way. One of the greatest gifts that each of us can give at our senior age is to think very seriously about when it's time to stop driving. In fact, in the United States, America, people are holding on to their licenses longer. Age 64 to 60 to 64, the percentages are from 83 to 95%, 65 to 69, 79 to 94%, and 70 and older from 55 to 78%. According to the researcher that gave these statistics, the reason why folks are holding on to their licenses longer is because our health is improving, one. Two, because baby boomers are basically stubborn, and I don't think I want to tell my kids that. And three, because folks are putting off their retirement in order to keep building their nest eggs. A couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine who's 10 years older than I had an accident. He ruined his car. He didn't hurt anyone else, but the deploying airbag broke his sternum. He told me he felt terrible, but that he would likely recover. When I asked him what he was going to do next, he said simply, "I've given up my keys. The truth is, I've held on to them too long. And the further truth is, I will not drive again. I am no longer capable." All good decisions on his part, but this accident could have been avoided. How do we get people to take this gigantic step if we're giving advice or if we're caring? I'm going to be followed by Commissioner Grimm was going to talk about the transportation system. David and I are both gearheads. I dreamed of getting my license a long time ago and driving across the United States by myself. Little did I know that I would do that because Uncle Sam was going to make me do it for the next 20 years, but I still am a gearhead. It's going to be terrible for me to give up my driving. And I think Dave is probably the same way because he owns a neat little car that he likes to fool around with. The question is, what kinds of tools are available to help folks make this decision? And you have to ask yourself some other questions. What happens if you or your loved one is evaluated by an occupational therapist or a doctor as being unfit to drive? I'm going to use a word now that we used a lot 20 or 30 years ago, myriad. There are myriad decisions to be made but there is a veritable cornucopia of information available, and I'll hold this book up. The Hartford group has, thank God, printed a whole bunch of these booklets. This is very fancy. This is the printed copy of one of the booklets, and you can have it free, or if you're impatient about having things in your hands, you can get it download it in a PDF. And there are several books, 4 now, that they've printed that talk about the driving decision. The first title is Family Conversations About Alzheimer's Disease, Dementia, and Driving. There are 2 people in my church group who are doing extensive driving. One is driving cancer patients. He's been evaluated, and he is a dementia patient. Just because you have a problem doesn't necessarily mean you have to quit, but you need to use the tools right to decide what the limitations are. The second book is, and I'm not sure that we like this sentence. I certainly don't like it when somebody pulls it on me. We need to talk. Boy, that's a loaded, it's been for my whole life a loaded sentence. We need to talk. This one, which almost always brought bad news, has a subtitle of Questions Family Need to Ask About Older Drivers. Tells its whole story. Now, we're coming on the holidays and families are going to get together. This provides us with an opportunity to have a talk with a loved one, if we need to, or to evaluate ourselves and ask ourselves the question, are we a safe driver? Or is our loved one a safe driver? And what the booklet does, and it's in a format that looks like this, it has checklists in it, questions and answers, conversation starters, all of those kinds of wonderful things that we need to get into a useful topic. This topic is almost as hard as the bird and bees topic used to be when I was a kid, and my parents were ruminating about how best to introduce me into that arcane subject at that time. Part of the topic is going to be relieving the anxiety of the person who's going to stop driving because they are going to feel isolated because they don't have a way to get around. And Dave Grimm is going to talk about that in just a moment. And the third book is a comprehensive guide to driving evaluations. There are all kinds of ways we can have our driving evaluated by doctors, sometimes, unfortunately, by police, by occupational therapists, by other people who can help us and what that means for us. For instance, in some states, if you have your driving evaluated by an occupational therapist and that person finds you unfit, they are obligated to report. So all of these kinds of questions need to be taken as a whole and thought about as a whole. But the fourth book also talks about how a person makes a decision, an older person makes a decision about what is the right car to buy. As far as I'm concerned is, in my case, one that I can get into and out of, not Dave's sports car, and one that I can see all the corners out of. These books are available to you on the internet free. And here is the easy direction. Safe Driving for Life. All one word. SafeDrivingForLife.com. SafeDrivingForLife.com/publications. Okay, should be easy to remember. All one word. SafeDrivingForLife.com/publications. With that, let's suppose that I've made up my mind that I no longer want to drive myself. I'm going to turn my keys in. What do I do, Dave?
Well, thank you, Len, for the lead-in. It is a very important consideration as an individual in a community to want to remain mobile and remain a part of the community. And I'd like to think that maybe what we have to offer, especially here in the Conejo, can be advantageous in understanding that just because you don't have a key to a car does not mean you have to stay at home. And so I'd like to start here. Start here by showing how to get onto this one site we have, which will describe the transportation capabilities here in the Conejo. As I was thinking about doing this, I was thinking back during the old days of Romper Room. And Romper Room always had the word for the day. Well, today we're going to have the phrase or the web address for the day, and that is www.tooaks. I misspoke. Well, thank you. toaks.org. Where are you? There you go. /seniors. All right, let's see if it works. What this has done is access the senior services available here in the Conejo via the City of Thousand Oaks website. You can certainly go directly to the TO website with just the first part of the address, which again was let's see if I do it right, www.toaks.org. And we may branch into that a little bit, but I wanted to come directly to the senior services because that is germane to what we want to talk here about, the availability of transportation. As you can see, this is the site for a lot of senior services here in the Conejo. The headings you can read. You can find out about our meetings, for example. The Senior Service Directory right here is an important document. If you have requirements and you want to know where some services are available, we still have hard copies, as well as knowing that this is the Senior Service Directory is on a website here. If you care to want to learn more about the Senior Adult Master Plan, which you hear often referenced here in our meetings, this is again a place to see a lot of the different information that has been gathered over the years, as well as the future for SAMP. Televised public meeting, which are a big part of our outreach in trying to give an idea to the community what we are trying to have folks understand, is also here, an access point. You could have learned about our meeting today just from this little site here. Senior Buzz is a new quarterly newsletter being fostered by Harry Norkin to, again, put into print media some of the things that are going on in the Conejo for the senior citizen. All right, now we're getting to pertinent information as relates to what Len was saying, once you give up the keys. And I want to make sure everybody understands that this information is available, and you can find it very quickly to learn about, for example, Dial-A-Ride. Here is the Dial-A-Ride portion on, again, this is basically the City of Thousand Oaks website. This will give you a brief introduction to Dial-A-Ride. There are two brochures here, one on Dial-A-Ride and then the ADA portion of Dial-A-Ride. They are two distinct but mutually inclusive programs that utilize the transportation system here in the Conejo. And this is just a little bit of information, the basic information, so you can get an idea of what the provisions are for Dial-A-Ride. I think you can see that it's fairly accessible, and there are numbers you can call for additional information on it, as well as additional information that you can find through jumping to different websites. This is the Dial-A-Ride portion of it here. The biggest thing, I guess, is that notice that it is a City Hall is where you'll get the Dial-A-Ride. Now, the ADA is a little bit different because that's more of a medical situation, but the Dial-A-Ride, basic Dial-A-Ride, is available through City Hall. All right, I'll go back one step, back to our Senior Services program page. And I'll go on the TO Transit. Now, this is the fixed system here. Again, there is a page devoted to the transit system. Depending how sophisticated you are, you can actually put in an address you want to start and your address you want to end, date, time, so you can actually plan a trip. Now, just a little basic information here, again, about the system. And one thing I wanted to bring out to highlight, I think it's been said before, are the fares and prepaid passes. Hello, hello. As you can see, this is the basic fare structure. If you're a DAR, dial-a-ride card holder, it's free transportation for the city, within the city on the transit system, similarly with the ADA situation. So I did want, there were a lot of changes made around August of this year, and this is one of the major ones where it does make it advantageous for dial-a-ride and ADA card holders to ride free on the bus. There are other situations here for folks to be able to use the other system. This is Vista Bus, which is also can be accessed via the center, the transit center. Routes and schedules has been condensed from 4 to 5 with more stops at these different places. Again, just trying to be a little bit more market-oriented as far as what's needed. Okay. So anybody in the panel have any immediate questions or anything I missed or anything else? I just want to have folks who are watching to understand that this information is available to access. And when the time comes, even like Len was saying, I know my sons would love to get a hold of a couple of cars I have, but I'm not going to give it to them yet. But if the time comes, I know that this is available, and I'd like you folks to understand that it's available too. Would like to also bring this out, and I'd like to see all folks have our senior services website actually put in a favorite to your computer. And all it takes is just highlighting the favorite marker, and it'll automatically put this up, and you just add to it. Okay. And so you can call up this immediately. When you go back to your favorites over here, you'll see that it is set up here, Thousand Oaks Senior Services, so I can go right back to the Senior Services location. Okay? All right. Well, happy driving during the holiday, folks, but if it's driving's not an option, we've got ways to get you around and keep you mobile. Thank you.
Thank you, David. All right, Martin, report on fraud and scams.
Okay, one of our commissioners received this in the mail from a company called LifeLock. And what it does, what they say it does, it'll prevent, if you sign up with them, it'll prevent identity theft. The service costs $10 a month. And what they really do is they place a fraud alert on your credit reports so that anyone who tries to open up a credit account in your name, well, they have to call you to make sure that you are really the person who's applying for credit. Now, this is something you really can do for yourself. You can call one of the 3 credit bureaus and place a fraud alert on your account, and you just have to renew it every 90 days, because that's all it lasts for. So your decision is, do I want to pay $10 a month for somebody to make a phone call for me every 3 months? That's your decision. The other thing they say is that they have a $1 million guarantee if your identity is stolen, but you have to read that kind of carefully. They're not going to pay you the $1 million. They will spend $1 million to try to restore your credit, not to pay for your losses. Anyway, the FTC got after them for these kinds of claims they were making and for the kind of advertising they put on. By the way, I've seen this offered on television, by the way, as well as in the mail. And FTC, and along with 35 state attorney generals, obtained $12 million settlement from LifeLock for the claims they were making and for their guarantee. And LifeLock agreed to change their advertising. Anyway, be careful about what you sign up for. Remember, and anyway, it doesn't really matter because putting an alert on your credit reports won't stop identity theft. Most identity thefts occur on existing accounts, not on new accounts that are open for you. So what you have to do is be very, very careful with your personal information, and remember to check your bank account statements and credit card statements every single month. One more thing, it's the holiday season, so I want you to be very, very careful about telephone solicitations, which are going to increase. For example, calls are being made supposedly from the sheriffs asking for donations. They're mostly fake. So don't do anything there. And lock your car. Don't leave packages exposed on the seats out there in the shopping malls.
Thank you, Marty. All right, we move on to our liaison reports. Nick, do you have anything on VC AAA?
I think in light of the hour, we'll postpone it till next month, if that's all right.
Okay, we'll move that over to next month's problem. We'll go to 6B, RSVP. Gene, anything?
No, that's fine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll do RSVP. I just want to, RSVP wants you to know that last year, 1,300 RSVP volunteers, just in the Caneo Valley, far more than any other local RSVP organization has, served over 315,000 hours locally.
Wow.
Now, they consider, now that's 3 times higher than the national average.
Wow.
Now, they use a number of $21.36 down to the penny as to what a volunteer hour is worth. If you add that up, that's like $6.5 million, which compared to the budget of the city is like 4 or 5%. 315,000. So this service is a significant value to this community.
Wow. That's my 5th wow. Andrea, what's happening at the Global Center?
Well, first of all, I want to say happy holidays to everybody, because I probably won't see most of you till afterwards. Some of them I see, some of you I don't. I just wanted to kind of touch on a few things that were brought up by the panel and brought up by Member Grimm. Volunteerism that was talked about, and then now, Mr. Shentes, you've brought that up. All our volunteers, if we didn't have them, the Global Senior Adult Center wouldn't operate very well. And there's quite a few businesses and local nonprofits that wouldn't operate very well in this city either. So there's always a place to volunteer, because we do place them at different places within the valley. So it's not necessarily the Global Senior Adult Center if you're looking for a retired and senior volunteer opportunity. And we also work with Habitat for Humanity and those organizations as well. So if you're more comfortable coming to our place and trying to get warm in that way or into something else, there's a place for you. And a little bit earlier, Senior Services Director was brought up. We still have a few left at the Global Senior Adult Center. We don't hand them out liberally, but if there's something that somebody is really looking for, we are more than happy to copy that particular page or pages for the information that is needed for somebody. And Dial-A-Ride was just brought up, and the ADA. We do sell the Dial-A-Ride cards at the Global Center, and it is $225 per card, but it saves you time, saves bothering the Dial-A-Ride driver, and you can get them there and take your time doing it. As well as we've got the routes for all the different, the Vista bus and the TOT bus, and we can dispense a lot of that information. We also have the forms if people are looking at applying for ADA transportation and do not use the web. We do have the forms inside the Global Senior Adult Center as well, and then they will contact you on their own. But once a month, sometimes twice, but generally once a month, they actually do the interviews at the Global Senior Adult Center to make it easy and accessible for everybody. So I thought I'd just kind of touch base on all those different areas that were brought up today because it was really cool, and we have a lot of the same information there. So if you get confused, you can always give us a jingle. Some other great stuff. We just finished up our holiday party Monday afternoon, and we had about 250 or so there, and it was great. So we had a lot of different skits from our acting group, and we had Mark Coran, a singer, and we had our tappers, and we had great food by Atria. So it was a really fun day. Some other things that are coming up, though, retirement is not an option, and that's going to be this Friday. And really, it's kind of a whole new twist. People aren't retiring the way we think of retiring. So they're looking at all sorts of different things. So it's going to be a very interesting seminar. So you might want to call and reserve your seat. We're also doing a falls prevention seminar, and this is the holidays, so that means you've got extra special stuff out, and trees out, and cords out, and just everything that we need to be looking for normally, but now it's the holidays and carrying packages and whatnot. So the Huntington Healthcare Solutions will be coming, and you'll get a home safety checklist, ways to get up from a fall, learning some different exercises for strength and balance and things that you can do at home to do that strength and balance, and a whole bunch of other tidbits of information. And that's going to be Monday, December 12th. So you can call for registration for that. I'll give the number at the end. And we are doing one last flu shot clinic, and it's sponsored by our local CVS pharmacy on Moore Park and Jans Road. And so they are going to come out, and it's free if you have Medicare Part A and B, just Medicare itself. If you don't have Medicare, or you just haven't gotten your stuff, you don't have insurance, they've lowered the fee to $25 for the shot. So that's a little lower than some of the other places we're offering this year. So that's going to be nice. And that's only from 8:30 to 11 a.m. So it's a brief, short window, but it's your last shot to get a flu shot. Monday, December 12th. And my next thing is Rotary Club's annual holiday breakfast. This is a good thing, and it'll be kind of sad for others, but we're full. We're up to 150 reservations with a waiting list. So that's a great hats off to them, because they do a wonderful catered breakfast and lots of entertainment and fun and singing, even at 7 o'clock in the morning. So, but it is full. So you can put that on next year's list to make sure you call in early enough for that. We're doing a special self-hypnosis meditation type of seminar free class. It's called Unlock Your Placebo Effect. So learn how to unlock the power within you through simple self-hypnosis techniques and some meditation to help really improve your life. I would suggest just for the hectic holiday seasons to get yourself kind of calm, because they can be very hectic. Friday, December 30th, we are using our Marquee Cafe, and we're expanding into the main hall before bingo starts to do a Happy New Year lunch. So we are doing tickets, and we will have some entertainment and some door prizes. So you just need to do your suggested donation for that and get your tickets at the front counter of Global Center. And I think, as was already mentioned at the beginning of the program, our Global Antique Bazaar, which will be January 22nd. So that's going to be an awesome fundraiser for the Global Center Commission. And if you need more information, give us a call on that. Let's see, we've got some new trips coming up. And so we'll be doing our trip registration here on Friday, December 9th, so it's this week. And we've got Hollywood Close Up. So those people will be able to go to Hollywood and have some lunch on your own, go to Hollywood and Highland, the entertainment complex, and admission to Madame Tussauds in Hollywood. We're going to do a Santa Barbara and Zoo with Amtrak. So we'll get to go motor coach and then do some Amtrak, go to the Fish House restaurant for lunch, Santa Barbara Zoo, and a self-guided tour, and come back. So that's going to be just a fun day to do different transportation, go to different things. And, of course, Santa Anita, can't leave that out. Racetrack is back. So, and you get lunch of choice from the menu on the site. So we usually have good seats, and it's always a fun trip. So those go on sale this Friday, starting at 9 a.m.
Santa Anita Day, what day was that?
Santa Anita is February 23rd.
Thank you.
So those are the highlights coming up. But just lots of things. We're very, 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 very busy. So, and if you need to get a hold of us, call 805-381-2744. You can also go to our website, which would be www.crpd.org/GSAC. But if you just get to the crpd.org, you're good, because you can see Global Senior Center on the left-hand side and click on it. And all the information in our newsletter and trips and support groups, everything's there. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Andrea. We now move on to agenda item number 7, Commissioner comments. Martin?
You have till midnight tonight to change your Medicare Part D selection provider, or change from your Medicare Advantage plan. Not a lot of time left, but you were warned often that it was running out today. Yeah, it's the only place you can do it at that point. Don't go to the senior center. They will not be able to do it for you. And let's see. Oh, we finally straightened out the Senior of the Year Wall of Fame down at the Senior Center.
No.
Yes, we finally did it. Everyone is accurate, and the last picture is up on the wall.
Wow.
But we have one little problem, and that's we have a display case in the hall, which it's called the Senior of the Decade and Senior of the Year. Back in 1975, we selected someone as Senior of the Decade. And in that display case, we have his picture, and we have the picture of the current Senior of the Year, Tony Ransom. And we have the plaques of everybody who was ever selected in the past as Senior of the Year. However, we have not had a Senior of the Decade in 3 decades. And I haven't been here 3 decades, so I don't really know why. Maybe Harry knows. He's been here 3 decades. So I would recommend that we change the name of that display case to Senior of the Year. And therefore, I guess we'll have, I recommend put that on the agenda for our next meeting.
Harry had a comment.
Thank you, Jim. I just wanted to remind everybody that today is the 70th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, and that we should all remember that day that will never die. Or as President Roosevelt said, the day that will live in infamy. Thank you.
Nancy?
I wonder if we could put on no, he just had a few. I wonder if we could, I'll bring it to the next meeting, maybe we could put it on the agenda to get something like this done here, because it really is very nice. Yep, okay. No, I don't think so. It's right here on the back, everywhere to go, and on the front it suggests not doing it.
Any other commissioner comments?
Oh, I just wanted to mention that earlier there was about giving, the whole program. There are ways to give to the Global Senior Adult Center, too, besides volunteering. You can actually link up your Ralph's card. Everybody does go shopping. We have a piece of paper at work, or at the center, and it has a little barcode on it. So when you go shopping, you can take that piece of paper, and they'll scan that barcode and scan it to your Ralph's card. And then we get a quarterly statement. So the more that people buy that are linked up to the this particular fundraiser, we'll get more money back to the commission, which then goes right back into the center. At the Global Center, there's 8 by a half, I can't even talk today, 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, says Ralph's on it, and it's a way to fundraise. And then there's a barcode, at the bottom of that piece of paper. So you just take that. If shopping at Ralph's, you give that to the checker when you're checking out. They scan that barcode on that piece of paper and link it to the barcode of your Ralph's card. So there's a real easy way to give without really giving anything out of your pocket because you're already shopping anyway for your own house. So that's a real easy way to do that. You can also just write a check or give cash donation to the commission itself, which is nonprofit. And I've also got our Marquee Cafe, and we're always seeking donations to help keep the cafe up and running for seniors, for lunch, for socialization, and it is good. And it also helps support our salad bar as well, besides what the grant does cover. So there's always a need for help, and sometimes we need extra help in the kitchen as well or in the dining room. So if you can't give monetarily, you can always give back in some time or expertise as well. So it's the season of giving and presents, and sometimes it's better to give than to receive. So happy holidays. I thought I'd bring that up.
Thank you, Andrea. Any other commissioner comments? All right, we'll move on to special events announcements. I would like to make another pitch for our Global Antique Bazaar on the 22nd. It's going to be a fundraiser, for one thing, a fun fundraiser. But the very fact that we have evaluators there to look at your potential treasures that you have, and that will evaluate the antiques you have around your house. I intend to have myself evaluated. And so, but just a reminder, February the 22nd, it's going to be a hoot. Any other special events announcements?
I would just like to.
And I would like to announce the opening of my family's restaurant in Dos Vientos. It's an Italian restaurant called La Cucina di Venti, and we will be opening Monday the 12th, and would love to see you there. So we've done all of our building, all of our design, and all of that with local people to help support the community. And, of course, we've hired about 300,000 people, or maybe not that many, but the burden seems to be there. So, please, La Cucina di Venti, good food, elegant dining, nice folks. See you there. Thank you. Any other comments, presentations? Happy holiday. Oh, one other very quick thing. You know, the next month is the beginning of the new year, and if you're like me, most of you will have some sort of plan for making your life a little bit better. You're going to exercise, you're going to diet, you're going to learn Latin. Whatever it is you're going to do to better yourself, we can get you started. Our program for January is 50 plus fitness. There you go. We'll do the mind fitness later. It's 50 plus fitness. We're going to show you how to exercise regardless of your age, things that you might even be able to do sitting in your Barca lounger at home watching Price is Right. So all of those things we're going to give you a lot of options to stay on your resolution. So join us next January 4th, is it? Is that the first Wednesday? First Wednesday of January, right here, TOTV, same bat channel. If there are no other comments, this meeting is adjourned.